Everybody. Hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. Okay. Okay. Je suppose je peux essayer de parler en français quand je expliquais cet jeu de chaque, mais je ne sais pas, peut-être un peu difficile pour moi. J'aime parler français, mais euh, difficile pour moi et les échecs. Le tout quand même, le tout en le même temps. Oui. I says that sometimes I think I could explain my game of chess in French, and then again I think maybe it's just a touch, just a bit beyond my uh, understanding of French. And this game I'll explain in English. That is true. That's one thing that we can be assured of. Okay, so we see that the game itself wasn't all too accurate. It was actually quite inaccurate, but we might enjoy reviewing it anyway. So here we go. The Russian defense is a symmetrical answer to the Knight's game. Bishop c4 is marked as an inaccuracy, and that's because of knight takes e4. So this is important for moi. See, I told you. No, this is a moment. This is important for me to note personally that bishop c4 is an invitation to capture on e4. Let's see why or how come. My opponent boots me back from e4 with the move d3. I move my knight to c5. He's in a kind of a wild and interesting location. And if my opponent tries a move like bishop g5, then simply bishop e7. And perhaps black is holding on to the pawn? No, I don't believe that. Not with knight takes e4 coming. But I think black has asserted his... black has asserted him, her, or they self in terms of a stake of a claim to the center of the board is what I'm trying to say. So that's interesting. Let's play that. I won't go all the way through because if I really do have a 0.46 lead as black as a result, the computer will still crush me in the following portions of the game. Now here, I would be tempted just to double white's pawns. Alright, and black is doing fine. And this pawn's capture, we could pin, and it would cost some king safety to protect that knight in the f4 variation. Maybe the bishop's coming here. Alright, not all too compelled by that one way or the other. Instead, I played bishop to c5, and I'm giving up the pawn on e4. My opponent missed that when I castle. Then challenging the center. The most direct way to challenge the center here, the best way to challenge the center here, is to move pawn to d5. And knight g4 was maybe a little bit ambitious, but I thought that the threats, that there would be two threats for white to try to counter. The clear threat on g5 of winning a full piece, and the threat of knight takes f2 with a fork against white's queen and rook. Sometimes we look for these as chess players' tactics, usually tactics, that achieve two threats simultaneously. It's called the rule of two, I think. And now I'm ahead by a full piece. The move pawn to d4. This is a strong move. I wonder if there's a better way to play than threatening. I threatened mate on h2. Didn't lose my lead, but lost a lot of progress on the progress bar. And if I'm not gonna play queen h5, then maybe black has something to keep things still with just bishop d6. We'll liquidate in the center, and we still face the issue of where to place our bishop without any kind of material gain. On the other hand, these pawns on d4 and d5 are more of a detriment to white when they're on d4 and d5 without any backup on c3 than otherwise. Let's try this. No, okay, that means my queen is going to be attacked. Sorry, folks. I'm early going here. Bishop takes g5. I'm feeling an interesting notion that I should try the same motif but just one square closer. Okay, that was it. That was it. Now we can capture on d4. We lose our knight. We capture the pawn. Looks fine. Alright, so best play, or that's not quite best play, but here's best play has black ahead by about 1.3 pawns. It's not actually by material 1.3, but this pawn and another 0.3 kind of mean it's ahead by 1.3 pawns. Okay. d4. I played the inaccuracy queen queen to h5. This is still sort of doing two things at once, stepping out of the way of my opponent's dark squared bishop, and the queen might come to h2 for checkmate. So I'm doing two things at once. The mate threat is easily met with pawn to h3. Then black has other things to do, including liquidating in the center. I'm keeping some tension here. Bishop d6 both stops the d5 pawn from advancing. That clogs up some of the potential of the c4 bishop. And also upon captures would make it so that white loses, either by bishop. If it's queen takes g4, then it's bishop takes g4 and black has lost a queen. If it's h takes g4, then it's queen to h2 checkmate, controlling the same squares while attacking. Where we had something else about this. We also stymied the importance of white's only developed minor piece. So we're looking at this board. Look at anything about this board. You should notice these pieces are all on their starting square. The king and rook aren't on their starting square, but they're on the back rank. White is trying to win the game with his bishop. I am trying to achieve checkmate with a bishop, a knight, and a queen. I'm more likely to succeed than otherwise. You could almost count the c8 bishop as developed because he has so many places to which he can go in the near future. So he almost counts as a developed piece. And I too have castled. So now my rook, look at all these pieces. Okay, we got the progress bar. I made some kind of boo-boo on the calculation. But aside from that for just a sec, that black has 3 pieces and his queen. He has 2 minor pieces and 2 major pieces in on the action here, in on the fight. We could, like I said, let's count the bishop at c8 for a moment. He might be traveling to d7 or to f5. White is seriously outnumbered. So something's got to give. White plays the best move here. It's the only saving move. We can tell here by torch. Bishop takes g4 is good for white. And all these other moves leave him, her, or they quite a bit behind. And so white does manage to liquidate my advantage in development. I'm thinking queen to d5 and maybe keep some amount of pressure on. I was anticipating bishop to h6 to put black to task against the checkmate threat. I think maybe my opponent was actually best. Well, no, here torch likes bishop h6. I think black could counter that with pawn to g6. As the rook has already moved off the f8 square, pawn to g6 just blocks the checkmating threat without sacrificing the exchange on f8. The rook is safely elsewhere. This is a motif I would recommend learning, that the queen is keeping the g7 pawn pinned. Then the bishop, dark squared bishop, comes to h6 so that there's a checkmating threat on g7. And if you simply push, which is often the only way, sometimes the only way to meet the mating threat, then with a rook still on f8, your opponent picks up the exchange for his trouble, his, her, they troubles. Bishop takes f8, king takes f8, down the exchange. Right. Now for all that great advantage in development or whatever I had before, it's gone. Sometimes this happens. Any advantage I had in better, more developed pieces is gone. This board is even. I captured my opponent's queen just for the doubled pawns of it, and develop towards the center because that's where knights belong. Here on pawn to f4, I thought it was a little bit hasty. Can black find the right move? Yes. Knight takes g4 is one of them. It's a free pawn. As we want to note that white's king is loose. I mean, he's vulnerable. White has poor king safety in this position. I'll leave trading rooks till later and apply the pressure. And wouldn't you know it, white steps into a mate in one. I spotted it though. I found the appropriate mate in one. And that's it. Alright, I have to think about this, folks. I probably am going to play another game. I'm not sure of that yet. I'd like to play another game, but it's tiring. No, it's not. Sometimes it's tiring. It's good tiring, though. It's fun tiring. Oh, that's good. All right, let's play another game. Let's play a game. We're going to give ourselves a little more time to play a rapid game. 10 minutes per side per game. First game I lost. My opponent played well. Not the first game. The first game today in rapid time controls, the longer of the two time controls. Let's see where I want to stray. Early. My opponent calculated this somewhat incorrectly. Okay, let's take a look here, Jord. A6, way too slow. We've got 3 pieces on the back rank. I have no business playing A6 in this position. Alright, so the knight can become active by returning to the, off the edge by knight to b5 or even knight to c4, but a6 is just not warranted. For starters, it keeps white's knight off of b5, and the knight will still be able to travel to c4. A better move for black here. Pawn to d6, and this bishop is going to be in action on one of these 3 squares, d7, e6, or g4. Another better move, so we like d6, we like knight to f6, knight to e7 has merit, or how about getting this knight the heck the Harry out of difficulty or trouble by moving to d4 or f4. Those are 5 moves, all of which are better than a6. Let's take a look if Torch agrees with us. Torch likes king e7. Maybe he's trying to get our king out of the way of tactics resulting from white playing f4. I'm not so sure about the knight f6 shows up. That was the best move with this knight. b6 shows up. I think we had that at one point, not at the last. And d6 is pretty good too. But a6 is way too slow. Way too slow. I kind of get my wish though. Pushing pawn to b5 immediately after. Now a6 is justified, but not at the time I played it. Look, a6 is protected, so that's fine. But then we're going to limit the knight from anywhere aggressive that he might go. Make him backpedal to c2. And he's not out of the game, but not a prize fighter or a star in the game either yet. One thing why I haven't played my knight away from e2 is I've been eyeing the right moment to capture on c1. Now as white's dark squared bishop can find a number of great squares to which he may move, I say, okay, now is the time to capture that bishop and move on with things. I wanted to get the long square, I want to get the long range piece off of the chessboard. But note that I don't have to do, like even here with black to move, I don't have to do it yet, he's blocked, so it's okay to delay. Moves that would hurry me along aren't all that great for white, so the knight stays. Yeah, and here the between bishop e5 and bishop b7, I lose a piece. So let's take a look at this in practice. We have this square guarded quite well. I was worried about the f7 square. So I played bishop e5. How can black cover better the f7 square? Or should we leave it to white, but then vacate at the right time, like with bishop f7 and bishop f6, but they're not enough. And I noticed this for a second. I thought, black must have better, but he doesn't. So we play knight to h6. Cover the squares that we need covered in our own camp here. And that's it. White returns his knight to a more playable part of the board. It'll take at least 2 moves to do that. And here with white, probably best to d7 doesn't do that much. Bishop d7 doesn't do all that much, frankly. So maybe bishop b7. Alright, well, that's fine. Bishop e5 was an accident, and then this, to be honest, when I made bishop b7, I thought I'd already lost the piece. I was already gonna lose, right? Aren't I already gonna lose the knight at g8? But no, I can replace this knight maybe to f6, where the dark squared bishop and my king both cover the square, so there's no material gain for white to be made there. I mean, pretty much most moves, right? Most moves, not most moves. Some moves, there are saving moves available. Back to h6, says Torch. I kind of eyed knight to e7 for a moment. Back to h6, and that Torch views this as favorable for black. Definitely gonna trade here. Break up the coordinated doubled rooks. Is there some sort of way to trap the rook here? No, because he's got access to the whole back rank and anywhere that he might be aiming towards white's side of the board. So we're not really going to be able to trap white's rook, but he might be hitting at squares that are less important than others. If we play this right. No way, get out of the way of the attack. And you know, and it's a game. It's a game. We're in the middle of a chess game here. So that was that. We had that on. This is on the game that I lost. Now, moving on towards greener pastures, the game that I won. It was a 18-move game, and my accuracy was high, so I'm glad about that. Let's revisit exactly what occurred, how the game unfolded. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4 is the Italian game. You know, my friends, I should turn off the HVAC. Sometimes Dick Van Dyke walks into the futon, the ottoman. Sometimes Dick Van Dyke walks around the ottoman. I've been told this. Dick Van Dyke sometimes walks directly into the ottoman and sometimes around the ottoman. Sometimes More Gravity remembers to turn off the HVAC, and sometimes More Gravity does not remember to turn off the HVAC. It'll go off. It takes a minute or two, and it'll go off. You'll be able to hear me a little bit more crisply. Knight to f6. Alright, so we could be moving to. I could have made a 4 knights situation. I thought about it and I said, nope, we're gonna stay within the Gyoko piano. This is not the Gyoko piano. What am I supposed to do? Play? It's probably better for white to play d6 here first, right? Or d3, I mean. White should play d3. Knight g5 is the fried liver. Oh, move. And d4 is a little bit like a Scotch game. So I'll play. I will play d3 in the future. This game I got away with c3, as my opponent was passive with bishop e7. Then I played d3, getting us back into book. And I don't, the bishop on c1. I don't want to put him on g5. So this knight is just covered, and there's not even technically there's not even a pin. So I decided e3 in order for the knight on b1 to be on d2, right? If the bishop goes to d2, first of all, he's hitting into the back of his own pawn. And second of all, that stymies the development of white's b2 knight. You don't want that. e3 is fine. So just to know, bishop e3 is fine. Don't worry too much about anything else about that. Pawn to b4 is fine. Bishop g4 seems fine to me. Getting this knight in so he can protect the other knight and that the queen can find duties elsewhere. That's also fine. Pawn to g4. We got the battery on b3 and c4. They're looking at the somewhat vulnerable f7 square. It's not crazy vulnerable, but we have the pieces to pursue. So we do. I felt it best to put pressure on black with h4, as if we're going to be attacking f7, h4 does that h4 does that indirectly. For instance, with pawn to h6 and then h5, bishop moves back to h7, and now white has numbers against the f7 pawn. My opponent played what I think is either the best or maybe the best move, and that's pawn to h5, keeping enough defense on f7, at least for the moment. Right? Bishop takes f7 is the way to go. For instance, if bishop takes f7, then knight takes f7, check. Rook takes f7, queen takes f7. Now who's missing? The rook, the bishop, the knight, and the other bishop. So white has won the exchange as a result, and that's to add to the 1 point of material that white has an advantage already, and whatever torch 4 is seen as the other 2.42 points of material on top of that. So maybe some of this 3.42 is built into the exchanges. So whatever it is, white may go up the exchange. Bishop takes g5 is an interesting challenge. It forces white to spot the right move. H takes g5. Any move other than H takes g5 is not quite good enough for white. bishop takes h5 looks like the alternative. White feels a little empty because he's gonna lose a bishop or an exchange here, and the materials almost, he only has 1 point of material in his favor. So anyway, h takes g5 leads to a lot of mistakes, and g6. Even g6 isn't all that fun because I capture on g6, and then I'm next going to capture in one way or another on h4, and that will also be a win for white. But things accelerated right here with the mate in 1. It was there. I spotted it. Great. Good. Checkmate. Game over. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.